Welcome to the Application Delivery How-To video series. My name is Charlie Gutierrez, and today we're going to be talking about how to create an HTTP app with header transformation. So the workflow here is pretty straightforward. A client is going to send a bundle of headers. We're going to receive them at the load balancer. We're either going to add to those headers, we're going to remove from those headers, or we're going to manipulate a header that's already sent, maybe change the value of the header before it gets sent to the backend. So now why would you want to do this? Perhaps you want to insert specific information about the client. Maybe you want to insert the SSL.cipher that the client used. You want to insert the client IP, just different things like that. In the example here in my PowerPoint, you can kind of see those already. You can see I sent this test header with test value 1. When it got sent to the backend, we manipulated it. We changed that test value 1 to test value 2. So this orangish line signifies that there was a change. That green line on the top actually signifies an addition. You can see that when this was sent to the backend server, we added that exported for header. So that's something that's configurable in the application profile in Avi. And essentially that inserts, the value of that header that gets inserted is the actual client IP. So if your backend server is configured to parse this, you can see who is really talking to me through the proxy. So now let's look at my lab and let's see how we can configure some of these. So now here we are at my controller. We can see we're looking at a virtual service that I've called header transform VS. So now let's look at some of the various options that we can use to manipulate headers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on this pencil. We're going to go to policies and we're going to go to HTTP request. From here, we're going to hit the plus sign. And now we're going to give that rule a name. So why don't I just call this add header 1. So the first thing we got to do is we have to pick some sort of match criteria. How do we want this to be applied to requests? Do we want to match on certain client IPs? Do we want to match on certain service ports, certain protocols, certain queries, etc.? So what I'm going to do, this VS is just listening on port 80. So I'm just going to say all requests that come in on port 80 because I want this to be applied to every request. So now I'm going to pick an action. What do I want to do? I want to modify a header. So now what in that modification do I want to do exactly? So I have three options here. I can add a header, I can remove a header, or I can replace a header. In this case, let's start with the first one. Let's do something simple. So I want to add a header, and let's just call this new header 1. And what do I want the value to be? Let's just call this test 1. So let's go ahead and save this, and I'm going to send some traffic, and let's see if that header gets added. Okay, so now let's go ahead and access this virtual service. Okay, we got the website from the backend pool, and let's take a look at the VS logs and see what happened. So I'm going to turn on non-significant logs, and let's look at this 200 response. This looks like the correct one. So one of the first things I see, request policy rule right here, add header 1. That looks like the rule that we made. So let's click this view all headers and see what's going on. So if we take a look at the headers right here, we see this connection keep live header was removed. We also see that this exported for was added before it was sent to the server that has the real client IP. And we see this new header 1 with the value of test 1. So now let's go back and let's take a look at those other options when we're modifying headers. So let's hit the pencil. Let's go back to policies. HTTP request, and let's just edit this rule that I've already created. So we've already looked at add header. This time, why don't we look at replace header? Let's kind of do what I did in that PowerPoint that I first showed. So let's look for a header called test header 1, and let's replace the value with, let's say, test value 2. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm going to need to send a request to this virtual service that has that test header that I just configured. So let's go ahead and do that. I have this browser plugin that's going to insert that test header 1 and test value 1 is the key. So let's just go ahead and send that request. Okay, so we got the pool member. Let's come back here and let's take a look at the logs. Okay, so let's look at this 200. So I see this add header 1 policy was hit again. So let's view the headers. So this time we kind of see things of every color. We see that exported for was added. That's normal. We see that connection keep alive was removed. That's normal. And now we see that test header 1, test value 1 was received from the client. But when we sent it to the backend server, we changed the test header 1 header value from test value 1 to test value 2. So again, that looks like everything is working as expected. That matches that modify rule that we made. So let's go back in and let's look at that final rule. Let's do a remove rule where maybe we just strip out this header completely. So let's close out of this. Let's hit the pencil. Go back to policies, HTTP request, and I'm just going to edit this one again. And this time I'm going to do remove header, and I want to remove that test header 1. So let's go ahead and save this, save, and let's try to access it again. I should still be sending that test header. Okay, so we got the backend pool member. And let's refresh the logs. And let's look at this 200 that we got. I see this hit that add header 1 rule. Let's take a look at the headers. So now everything is the same, except now we have 2 red lines. We see that test header 1 with the value of test value 1 was removed. So again, that looks like everything is working as expected. One more thing to keep in mind is in this demo, I've been going through and I've just been adding these on the HTTP request right here. These aren't limited to HTTP request. You could go in here on the response and you could do something similar. You could add a match. We could do the same match. Service port is 80 and we could modify header. So we could do the same thing, but on the response instead of the request. So if maybe we only want to manipulate things that are on the way back, but that's just something to keep in mind. So hopefully this video has given you some insight into how easy it is to add, remove, or modify headers within a request or response in Avi. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd also like to invite you to check out our other exciting videos in the Application Delivery How-To series. Thanks.